As Professor of Practice at IIITB Bangalore, Professor Ramesh's engagements and research focuses on digital social innovations. Very fortunate to have you amidst us, Professor, and today is going to talk to us about what's the purpose of a pitch deck and how to go ahead. At the end of the session, please feel free to ask your questions or put it up in the Q&A tab. Sumukh and I will be moderating the same, and this is your chance, friends, to get to know what and all it takes for the pitch on the 17th. Over to you, Professor Ramesh. Thank you.
Able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Karthik and Sumukh, for your kind introduction. What I thought after these last 6 sessions, you have all listened and understood the various aspects relating to starting working on your idea, starting off with your venture or your innovative product. What I thought I would do in this session is primarily focus on what exactly is the purpose. This could be at various levels. Purpose at the level of your venture, if you've already started a startup. Purpose at the from the standpoint of your product. Purpose from the standpoint of your innovation, whatever you are trying to do, whether it's through technology or whether it's through just research. What is the purpose of that research? And as Mr. Karthik said, in this boot camp, there is a plan to have a pitch deck competition. So what is the purpose as far as preparing a pitch deck is concerned? So that's primarily what I wanted to achieve in this session. Mr. Manoj, next slide, please. See, before we look at what exactly is our purpose, let's take a step back, and then what is that we are trying to achieve? We are trying to create an offering. This offering could be a product. This offering could be a venture. This offering could be anything, a research work. We all want this research work to make a huge impact. It should fly. I mean, it should be very successful. We always say that we have to fly high. It's like a bird. So a bird typically flies with 2 wings and a rudder, I mean a tail, to steer it. Now these 2 wings are essentially an intellectual piece and an emotional piece. Now, one without the other, the bird will come crashing down. So similarly, whatever offering that we are trying to create, I mean, I'm just keeping it very neutral. It could be product, venture, offering, research work, just anything that you create, even an essay for that matter, proof of concept. All of these things, we trying to achieve 2 parts. 2 things have to be there. One, there is an intellectual contribution has to be there. There's number 2, there has to be an emotional connect. Now, both one without the other, it will make the bird to fly down. And people will, if there is too much of intellectual content in the venture or in the product, no emotional connect, it's of no use as far as the end user, the citizen is concerned. If it's too much of emotional connect without the intellectual contribution, it's nothing new. I mean, many people have already done that. So our effort is to have a good balance of both intellectual contribution and emotional connect. And to steer us in the right direction is the rudder, is the purpose or the belief. So we always have to have this. So the purpose is something which is very core to drive us in the right direction. If we don't have this, we might glide high, but in the wrong direction. So I'm just setting out the context. Primarily, if we understood this metaphor of a bird, then we are all set. We now know at every point of time, am I quite balanced and am I going in the right direction? Now, with this metaphor, I'm going to run through the remaining set of slides. Manoj, next slide, please. So let's look at the leading innovators and their thoughts. Now, Alfred Nobel, everybody knows he's the father of dynamite, and he's also the person who institutionalized the Nobel Peace Prize. Similarly, Oppenheimer is the father of atom bomb. And on the day the explosion happened, he actually said, "I have now become death," quoting Bhagavad Gita. Clayton Christensen is well recognized and well regarded as as somebody who is a leading voice in the area of disruptive innovation. And he has also authored many books, including The Innovator's Dilemma. But the last book that he wrote, I don't know whether it's the last book, but one of the books that he wrote towards the very end was How Will You Measure Your Life? And he, during the last few years, he actually told, I have concluded that the metric by which I will get assessed is not dollars, but individual people whose life I have touched. Reid Hoffman is the founder of LinkedIn. He said the social networks do best when they tap into one of the 7 deadly sins. Now, why I'm trying to give these examples are all of them are leading innovators. They have come up with their own products or ventures or impactful creations that made a good, serious mark in the life of everybody. But at the end of, or as they look back on their creations, I'm not sure they were, they happily spoke about those innovations. They actually tried to look at them and then say that how best they can steer them in the right directions. So in some sense, as we start working on things, if we can have our directions and our contributions rightly aligned, then we can be both happy and at the same time we can be more impactful on the community as well. Next slide, please. Now let's come back to each of our lives. We are all aspiring innovators. We are all aspiring entrepreneurs. What we have at our disposal currently, we all have a lot of energy. In our 20s, we have enough energy, we have a lot of knowledge, and we have time at our disposal. What we struggle is that we struggle for worthy problems because we don't have enough understanding of the community, enough understanding of the society, enough understanding of the challenges that is faced by the community. So we struggle for worthy problems. We struggle for trustworthy mentors because we don't know whom to trust and what to trust. And we all look for team members and we look for funding. But all of us want to do one thing. We all want to leave a mark one way or the other. We all, either it's money or it's impact or it is fame, we all want to have that. Whether we are called an innovator or whether we are called an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. All of us want to make a mark. But our struggle is essentially these 3. If you go to the next slide, please. We have what we look for and what we really need is that we look for a series of worthy challenges. If somebody can tabulate those challenges and make it available to us, then we can actually pick and choose. We can then see that, oh, what is that I have? What do I aspire to have? What are the skills that I already possess? Otherwise, in the absence of this, what happens? We look for successful models, so-called successful ventures. And success is now, it can only be decided, or success or failure can only be talked about in hindsight. It's very difficult to see. So as we go, when we look at some of the successes, it may not be successful after a few years. Or if we think some are failures, it may actually not be a failure when we look back after a few years. So what we are actually struggling for is, if there is a set of people or an organization which can give us a series of worthy challenges, which we can pick and choose, and then look at them and then align that to our skills and aspirations that we have. And we're also struggling for a team. Now, at least one member who is a good sounding board to us. In that we should definitely have. Otherwise, what happens? We are lost. So this one team member is what we are looking for. And many of us struggle for money. So obviously we can't do full-time focus. We can't have a full-time focus on the role that we are trying to do, on the venture that we are trying to do. So even if you are not physically able to focus on that activity, we can continue to focus on our so-called worldly activities, whether it is earning money or studying. Mentally, if we focus on those challenges and every day, if we breathe those challenges, and think how those challenges we can work upon, executing the day-to-day work that we are currently doing, That's what we are struggling. I mean, that's what we need. So that's what we should aim for to achieve. Now, how is that possible? Next slide, please. See, this again, if we love something or somebody, the love actually increases when we try to understand more about the person or the thing. So if we understand less, the more we read, the more we understand, the more the liking we start to have, or the more we we try to get confirm ourselves that yes, this is something that I should love, I should be associated with. So it is generally with the knowledge comes passion, drive, or love. So everybody says you have to be passionate about your venture or your product. Now, passion does not come all of a sudden. Passion comes only with knowledge. So that means, as from an outside, I mean, when you look at everybody's appreciation, accolades, it look wonderful, it look attractive. But we need to spend more time to understand not only that space, but also that founder or the entrepreneur or that individual who is behind that venture, to clearly understand that this person or this venture is successful because of, so that understanding has to come. I should invest enough time to understand that challenge, understand that venture, or understand that community or that customer. If I don't spend enough time, I will not be able to conclude with confidence that this is a worthy challenge and I'm really passionate about that challenge. So that's something which has to be done. So if I try to sort of look back at these 3-4 slides again, just to summarize. Number one, we are like a bird. All our creations, we try to ensure that there is a good mix of intellectual contribution, an emotional kind of connect, and this is also steered by our belief or purpose that in the right direction. So that unlike other leading innovators, we at the end of the day should be feeling happy that yes, I did the right thing and I have invested my time well. So for me to do that, I should invest sufficient amount of time to build the knowledge, so that my passion toward that particular product or startup or venture or whatever the challenge goes up, and I can say with confidence that yes, I am now confident that this is the right challenge or problem that I should invest my time in and I should work on. Next slide, please. See, this next slide, I mean, if you look at business literature, there's tons of materials available on various fits. There is something called as a market to problem fit, a problem to solution fit, a product to market fit, and there is a business model fit. So there is what we try to, so in all of these things, what we always say is that there is a challenge that is present in the market. I, as an individual or as an aspiring innovator, entrepreneur, go there and look at the market, and then try to understand, oh, is there a problem in this marketplace? Yes. And then I try to articulate that as a problem that I want to sort of spell out faced by the market. Then I come back to the lab or my office or wherever, and then I try to come up with a proof of concept or sort of a solution potentially addressing the problem. Then I work on that solution, make it a minimum viable prototype which the customer can appreciate and use, bring it to a stage where I have got a product which potentially addresses the market's needs effectively. Then I come up with a business model that is more appropriate to that customer. At every stage, I ensure that there is a fit. Now, all of these assumes that I am completely sold up. I mean, sort of sold out on that problem. In that sense, there is a great fit between my individual aspirations and skills and what I want to achieve in my life with the problem that I have found out from the marketplace. Now, if there is no such fit, what would happen is I would have got an excellent market problem fit. I will get an excellent problem solution fit. I will have a great product market fit, wonderful business market fit. The problem will be, the venture will be a huge success. At the end of the day, I will regret saying that, oh, I have studied this, but I'm doing something, or this is not what I wanted to do. So there'll be a great kind of a remorse at the end of the day. So as we start working itself, if we can focus our energy and then say that, oh, I have found out this problem from the market. Obviously, the market problem has to be understood. At the same time, I also understand, just like the way the problem that I have found out has got a nice fit with the market, does it resonate with me? Is there a nice fit with my own individuality or my ego or whatever? And then I can step back and say, yes, there is a great fit. Why there is a great fit? Because somebody in my own family suffered that, or somebody whom I knew has the same problem. We are also part of the community, whatever that is. So if I view sort of emotionally, intellectually, rationally, it may be great. But emotionally, if I look at my own problem and then say that, hey, is there an emotional connect between me and this problem? Then I will never regret my whole life working on that particular problem, working on that solution, working on that venture. Next slide, please. Now, Mark Anderson, everybody knows, so A16Z founder. So he talks about the triad. He talks about for something to be successful, there are three aspects. One, market opportunity. What is the size of the market? What is the growth rate of the market? Talks about the caliber of the team, the entrepreneurs, the founders, the founding team, and the quality of the product that is being created. And he concludes in his sort of article, he says that though these three are very important for a successful venture, something successful, great to happen, he says it's the market that always helps us win. So as I start working on it, once I know that my purpose is served by working on this opportunity, the next thing I have to find out is, let me rephrase it. I have found out my purpose, and then I go and look at the market problem. I found out a wonderful problem that resonates with my thought process. Great. Next step is I have to find out whether this market problem that I'm working on has got a huge opportunity in the first place. If and only if there is a great opportunity in the first place, then I put all my time and energy to build, because otherwise I'm creating a new market for my product, and that is a lot more time consuming and effort involved. That is also great, but I should have the patience to make that happen. So market opportunity has to be well understood. Once I understand that, then I have to build a great team, then I work on a quality product. All of those things matters, but opportunity comes first. Moment I finish my purpose, I focus on the opportunity. Professor C.K. Prahalad talked about the similar thing in the book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, where he talked about how there is a huge market available at the bottom of the pyramid, which is looking for solutions, for products, and there is a great way by which companies can make money in that. While it is debatable whether the bottom of the pyramid can be considered as a market or something we have to serve, rather than tap into them as those who are just suffering for solutions. The point here is that the market opportunity is something which is very, very important to focus upon. Next slide, please. Now the question now is, how do I go and search for market opportunities? Isn't it a tough thing to look for opportunity? Because I don't think there are enough useful things which have a huge marketplace, huge market potential. That's not true, actually. If you look at it, even in India, we look at the number of hearing impaired versus the number of sign language interpreters available. There is a huge dearth of sign language interpreters. If you just go and if you have a look at the statistics, you will find that the number of interpreters available to the number of people looking for such kind of a solution is the ratio is extremely poor. I mean, since it's 1 to some 1,000, 10,000, some big number. Similarly, so there are organizations there are opportunities, there is a need for solution there. So the opportunity size is huge. There is an organization called Thorn Foundation, which is in the US. They focus on child sex trafficking, pornography. The numbers are huge again. Across the world, there is a need for solution, and they are working on wonderful products and solutions. There are organizations like Code for America, US Digital Response for COVID, Rotary International. This is again a not-for-profit. I mean, it's an organization that has been trying to help. Now, these are all organizations. Now, let's look for products. Microsoft launched a product, research launched a product called 99 Dots in India. That's trying to address the issue faced by tuberculosis patients not taking their medicines properly. So this is a very simple, if you look Google, I mean, if you sort of look for the solution, you will find out that this is again a huge opportunity market where this solution addresses the real need. In India, as part of Government of India, we have Aadhaar, Modular Open Source Identity Project, UPI, iSPRIT, Janagraha, e-Government Foundation. These are all organizations that have come, and then they have tried to look for ways by which even IIIT Bangalore as an institute, this is the sort of first graduate only institution, more like a trying to address an opportunity which is there and which research centric, research oriented. Now, what I'm trying to hint at is it look in the first place that very few opportunities are large in size. So we have to end up working on a platform. We have to end up working on an e-commerce store. We have to work on some kind of Me Too kind of an offering, because there are others who have done that. Food door delivery or food delivery or whatever, coupon delivery. So many deliveries are there, right? So now it's not the case. There are really huge opportunities, market sizes for worthy problems which are looking for solutions. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So now let's look at when I say you need to breathe your challenge daily. What I mean is, like, obviously I cannot work on day one. I am a student or I am an aspiring entrepreneur. I am working on in my company day-to-day basis. I have to struggle to keep my salary or keep my house running. So it is difficult. So I cannot be jumping on to this kind of solutions day one. But I am listed here those solutions that we are nurturing, those ventures that we are nurturing. This is only a sample set. This is only in our campus. So there are equivalent such in large numbers in other incubators and other institutions, NSR Cell, in ENCORE, in Social Alpha, in IASC, to name a few, right? So I'll just take a few of this, like Bionic Kentra focuses on physically challenged. Healthy Life is trying to focus on electronic health records. Vision Empower, visually challenged. Why I'm trying to tell, all of these things have been created by those people who have been, and some of them are part of, like, the first column of startups. These are all solutions that are trying to address somewhat similar accessibility related needs, mental wellness, physical wellness, visually challenged, auditory challenged set of issues. The second column of startups, these are more intellectual in nature. The first one are more emotional with intellectual, significant intellectual, but more you can connect with them emotionally. The second set of startups, column of startups, very, very intellectual. Nervio Cloud, the Zero Labs, VideoKen, these were all part of, I think the first two was part of NASSCOM Deep Tech Club. They graduated, they sort of moved, also part of Deep Tech Club, incubated from our campus. Mathologic, focusing on Indian Railways. Circuitverse, a student startup, focusing on building a community around how do you design circuits using software, electronic circuit design. So the next set of startups are, next columns of startups are focused on how do we take more of technology enabled, how do we take this to solve an issue, mining industry, transportation industry, smart city, fields of view on smart city, Kisan Sathi on agriculture, online RTI, Sunwai on legal. And there are also organizations, startups, which are focusing on, are NGOs, primarily focusing on the social issues, Archive of Indian Music, Kalki Foundation, so we also work with Bangalore Press, Berunda Foundation, Gyanom Foundation. So when we look for challenges, we can get inspiration from these startups. We can get inspiration and understanding of the challenges from the foundations and NGOs. So there is no depth of issues from these that we have in our society, which we need to work on. Next slide, please. Now, okay, so I am still lost. Okay, so I am still lost. I don't know how to go about. Okay, let's have a. I sincerely insist that you have a look at the book written by Swami Vivekananda on Karma Yoga. Have a look at the Pale Blue Dot video by Carl Sagan. Just so that this looks too spiritual. Have a look at Starting with Why by Simon Sinek. Have a look at digital social innovation projects being done as part of European Union's Horizon 2020 project. Now, closer home, if you want to look at innovation projects, you can look at MyGov's Innovate website, MeitY Startup Hub, Government of India's MeitY Startup Hub, Government of Karnataka's K-Tech Innovate Karnataka portal, Ministry of Human Resource Development Innovation Cell, and Startup India. There are tons of challenges. Now, this will help. So when you look at the startups, now if I try to summarize the past few slides, what we have done is we have got enormous amount of energy, we have got knowledge, we have got time, we have a good understanding of technology. Now we are struggling. We want to be looking at our friends and neighbors, and then we say, oh, I also want to be an entrepreneur. I also want to be an innovator. I also want to look cool. I also want to get recognized. My name should also come in the press. Wonderful. But let's look for some worthy challenges. As we look for worthy challenges, where do we look? So that's where we struggle, right? Where do we look for such worthy challenges? Okay, let's look at, I've listed a few names. Let's look at a few of those organizations like Thorn Foundations, 99 Dots for inspiration. Let's look at these are all established. Okay, they are all having big players. Okay, let's look some closer startups who are struggling right now, who are making a mark right now, so that we can get inspiration from them. We can look at not-for-profit foundations and look to see what they are writing in their blogs. What challenges are they articulating in their videos, so that now we know. See, if you go to Justice and Care, you will see tons of material on human trafficking. How can we help through solutions on human trafficking, refugees? So these are all very, very worth, I mean, International Committee of Red Cross, problems relating to that. So you will see that. Then, okay, I've got the inspiration. Now I know what others are doing. I am now ready. I am looking for a challenge. Now you look at the government portals, this particular page, right? My Government Innovate, my K-Tech they post a lot of government posts, a lot of grand challenges, Startup India. Whether I get funding there or not is immaterial, right? I am more getting the worthy challenges. I'm now going to work on these challenges, use my skills, put my skills to good use. Now, what happens when I put my skill to good use? If I put my skill to good use, automatically there will be people who will support. It will happen. That's what has happened for all the others, whether it is Vision Empower or whether it is N-Smiles or Kickstart Cabs, all of these startups, including the so-called the intellectual ones, not necessarily the emotional ones, the Zero Labs, the Nervio Cloud, all of them came in as individual founders. They all were looking for team members, looking for funding, looking for customers. It happens. It aligns and it happens. If we put our effort, it will all happen. So that's that's primarily my sort of summary on the purpose for what we should strive for. Now, having spoken about the purpose, let me talk about what we do at IMAX. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here, if we look at it, okay, so what is that obviously, so we are an educational institution, an incubator and educational institution, and we have a little bit of luxury when compared to individual startups. So we also almost run like a startup. The institute itself is only 20 years in existence, and the Innovation Center has been in existence for the last 10 years. So we ourselves visualize as a startup which is struggling and which has to make a mark, which has to be useful to the society, which has to make ways by which entrepreneurs, startups, students, researchers, everybody succeed. And we also want to look back in hindsight and then say, yes, what we did was actually worthy, and we need to feel little satisfied, right? So what is our purpose? So we can do some little bit of a motherhood statement, because we have that position right now. So we say that, okay, our effort is to make our students or aspiring entrepreneurs responsible citizens of the future. They use the technology to create a positive impact on community. So consequently, we try to nurture social innovators and entrepreneurs and create socially relevant solutions. So we guide. What is that we used to guide? Okay, every time we see, is it accelerating civic excellence? In the sense, do I help, do I enable my researchers or my innovators or those who come to our campus use technology for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of the civil society? And how do we go about doing it? Are we working in sort of a selfless fashion, so that there is a clear distinction between, or whatever you can call, like our clear value proposition or our unique selling point, whatever we want to say as a management jargon? How do we distinguish ourselves from other players who are trying to nurture startups, both in terms of the potential startups that we try to nurture and encourage, as well as in terms of the processes that we employ to help such startups make that transition? So this is what we believe and what we try to do. Next slide, please. So in this, how do we go about? So just like the way I mentioned for any aspiring entrepreneur, we also have the same thing. What are the worthy challenges that we as an incubator or as an accelerator can focus on? So we try to look for challenges. Then we try to look for challenges that align with our goal, our purpose. So does it align? Okay, if it aligns, how do we get to whatever I just now talked for an aspiring entrepreneur appeals to us also, right? We should have a worthy challenge. Okay, what is the next step? We should have a team that is aligned to that. So can we look for faculty members or researchers who can contribute in an intellectual fashion towards that challenge? Can we look for, next step is to get the proof of concept, which we do with the researchers, get converted into a market ready solution. Can we partner with some startups? Can we partner with some go-to-market organizations, corporates, who can then help us take these into minimum viable prototypes, deployable pilots, and then can we look for grants, CSR grants, government grants, investors? Can we refer the startups and the solutions to corporate accelerator programs, which we have successfully done many times? And so that these pilots that we run really have an impact on the community. This is what we try to do. Next slide, please. So slightly detailed, if I talk about, we have three focus areas, sort of three offerings as part of our IMAX offering, IMAX initiative. One, we call it as Pixel, focusing on the challenges. Number two, we call it as Studios, primarily focusing on anything to do with idea stage all the way to pilots. While the challenges, the Pixel focuses on culling out the challenge which is present in the market. I mean, that is anyway present. The challenges are present in the market. There is, irrespective of whether there is a founder, whether there is an entrepreneur, whether there is a startup working on it, the challenge exists. So in Pixel, we are only trying to find out the challenges there. In Studios, now these challenges have to be addressed and solutions have to be developed. So that's where the challenge gets rephrased into a problem. That problem is going to be addressed by a potential aspiring entrepreneur, called as entrepreneur in residence or an innovator in residence, who then helps address that problem, works with the faculty and the researchers to get a research-led innovation solution, subsequently starts forming a team, creates a venture, and then launches it as at least as a pilot. Post which we refer the startup to corporate accelerator programs or business incubators so that they can then focus on nurturing that startup beyond that stage. Now, we also have an offering called Play, where we try to record all our sessions that happen both within campus and online, so that it is used for the benefit of others. So that's primarily what we try to do. The next slide, if you look at it, it really goes into the timeline, how we get to do this. We are also a TIDE 2.0 incubation center. Mr. Karthik Kittu is our Chief Innovation Officer, is driving this program. So here our effort is to nurture both TIDE Entrepreneur in Residence program as well as the TIDE Startup program, where we've received grants for nurturing startups. We've also received grants through corporate CSR programs. So that also we try to use for, again, sort of working on these worthy challenges and how these challenges can make an impact on the ground. So in this picture, you will really see that how there is a transition made from, there are a lot of acronyms here, but that doesn't matter. What essentially it is talking about is how I, as a founder in residence or an entrepreneur or innovator in residence, primarily transitions from that stage, goes through the crucible, goes through the incubator, and then at the end of able to launch a successful pilot in the marketplace. Next slide, please. Now, this the next slide talks about how the startup works closely with the various centers in the institute. Next slide, please. How the startup works very closely with, sorry, the slide before. Yeah, how the startup works with various research centers. We have multiple research centers in the institute. We have both tech research centers and domain research centers. We, as part of IMAX, we leverage, essentially, we partner with the institute. And then we try to take the expertise of these tech research centers and the domain research centers. We have multiple tech research centers. We have also multiple government or funded domain research centers. There is Government of Karnataka's e-health research center. We also have Government of Karnataka KTech, MINRO, Machine Intelligence and Robotics Center of Excellence on campus. We have a unique center called Center for IT and Society, which focuses on how technology can help us society, and predominantly this focuses on faculty members and researchers who are generally critiques of technology. They try to have a balanced view. They actually see, can a social issue be solved even without using technology? And there is a course, it's a one-of-a-kind course called MSc in Digital Society, where the focus is on how, as sociologists, as society first folks, how can I look at technology helping us? Generally, we look at technology first. We look, as technologists, as entrepreneurs, we look at saying, oh, I've got a technology, can I look at a problem to solve? As sociologists, here the focus is on, in this particular center is on, what is the social problem faced? Malnutrition. Okay, can I look at existing solutions? Is there an intervention possible without even technology? If technology has to be used, what are the pros and cons? So that's the kind of, so we partner with these kind of research centers and then try to focus on them. Next slide, please. Now, having explained, so what I essentially did in the last four, 5 slides was, what is our pedigree? I mean, what is, why do we even exist? And what do we do? So that you know exactly whom you are talking to when you talk to us next week or in future. Why should you even consider us? So that's the primary message I wanted to give in the last few slides. Now, having you known us, now we want to understand how we could be of help to you. So as an entrepreneur, innovator, startup, you are investing your whole life on this venture, on your product, on your creation. And it's a prime time of your life, right? 20 to 30 years, the age where a lot of things happen. And it's the time frame which is very, very crucial. So it can be considered as a great springboard for a great future. So when you associate or invest your life and try to associate with us, we should know how we can help. Otherwise, there is no point you associating with us. So for that reason, essentially forget whether it is IMAX or IIITB or anything. Just for your own reference, you should know What is the purpose of your creation? Whether it is venture, product, why do you even want to create it? You should have a purpose, right? And you also should know what's the market problem you are planning to solve, having understood your purpose, having understood your goal. Then you try to look at solution that you are planning to do. Then comes team members. And while market opportunity is very, very important, market opportunity is also why first few things, once you have understood, then market opportunity you should be able to articulate well. Now, here is where the, this looks very theoretical. I just wanted to give you a little insight. So when you say purpose of your creation, if you sit and think for yourself and then say, oh, I am a BTech, BSc, or from an education standpoint, no, I have got an enormous amount of skills in this particular domain. Okay, let me put my domain first, my understanding first, or a tech first, or a skill first, or a education first, or a connection first, whatever. This is my sort of repertoire of skills, or this is what I bring to the table. Then I look around me, trying to understand what are the problems I see in my immediate vicinity or in my, so something has to trigger, I mean, something has to make you, even now, when we look to start a venture, we have got some trigger. We look at, this company raised the next round of funding. Maybe I should start that. So we have got a trigger. We look for some triggers. So that trigger, a set of such triggers will help us find a direction. So once we know the direction, we can use our inner voice to really understand, yes, this is what I want to achieve, right? Once you get to know that, then you can, it's a little easy to put together these 5 points. You may clearly say, oh, I don't have team members, but this is what would be essential. So if you can articulate that, this is primarily what we look for when somebody approaches us for help. And I'm pretty sure when you are in an early stage, anybody you approach would look for the same thing. The market opportunity is something which is very essential, but unless you invest a lot of time and energy, you will not be able to articulate that well. A good spreadsheet might only convey whatever is your current understanding of the market opportunity. So it is something which you can relegate to the last, at least initially, till you got the first few points clearly articulated well. And you have, next slide, please. No, the slide afterwards, this one afterwards, yeah. So in the pitch deck, you generally communicate. You have heard a lot of speakers in the last few days, right? You had Ms. Yashashwini, Mr. Pillai, and Ms. Vanshika talking about how you can pitch yourself, pitch your venture, story, sort of art of storytelling, how you can focus on the opportunity by Dr. Sham, focus on your business by Dr. Shantalo, sell your solution and your venture by Mr. Kadim, how exactly you can plan your MVP and your venture by Mr. Kadim as part of their talks. So you really understand now what are the various aspects. You know about the market from their talks. How do you talk about the opportunity? How do you know about the customers? You already know about the technology if you're from a technology background. Now, what essentially all of these things when you present, many of the folks in the audience will also know those. At least some of them will know those. But what essentially none of them know is about you. So if there is a way, your sincerity or your focus, why you, that aspect comes through. It will not only be a revelation to yourself, in addition to others. Obviously, it will be a revelation for others, right? Because nobody knows about you. But it will be a revelation for you also when you really put these things, when you put it in writing. So that's pretty much what we want to know from you. Next slide, please. Now, suppose if you say that, oh, what if I don't know technology? Yeah, no problem. There are partners available. We had a company called Kisan Sati that came to us. A group of farmers who did not know technology. There are NGOs who are coming to us, they don't know technology. But it is essential that there has to be a vision to have a technical member in the team, one way or the other. Otherwise, you will be at the mercy of somebody else, right? If it's a tech-enabled firm. What if I don't know the domain? Great place to partner is NGOs, right? So you should, as part of your pitch deck, you can articulate whom are you partnering with. Just like the way I told, for IMAX, we partner with IIIT Bangalore. We partner with the researchers. We partner with the faculty as advisors to our startups. Money. Everybody looks for money. So, but if you focus on the challenge and if you make others believe in this, money has never been a problem in a worthy challenge, in a worthy startup, in a worthy offering. Same applies for team. Same applies for mentors. All of these things, it's the same. If there are various organizations focusing on different worthy challenges, and these will definitely come as we understand, as you make progress. All of these things will definitely happen. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I just basically a summary. I mean, over the last 6 sessions, you have heard all of them. I think you will definitely benefit from the forthcoming sessions as well. And I'm really happy that I could share whatever I know and what I feel, which might potentially be of some use to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Ramesh, for those enlightening words. I think we can proceed with the Q&A. Sumukh, over to you.
Yes, sir. We have a first question here, sir. It says, should an entrepreneur search for a problem statement to start with, or identify a problem posed by any organization?
See, actually, this is exactly what I was referring to, right? So, if as an entrepreneur, I am actually trying to take a risk. When they use the word, let's try to differentiate these two terms, innovator and entrepreneur. When as an innovator, when I try to look, as an innovator, what is that I'm trying to do? I am trying to look for a problem, and I'm trying to sort of offer a solution for that problem that is there in the market. So now there are two choices available with me, right? Either I should know the problem that I want to work on. If I don't know the problem that I want to work on, then I have to look for problems that are posted by others. And generally, unless I have significant exposure to the surrounding environment or the society or world, I will have a frog in the well kind of a syndrome, where whatever I look. So suppose if I stay in a hostel, I will only look for hostel related problem. Can I give a credit card for students? Can I help create a Facebook group for whatever, a real-time messaging app for students to connect with? So that kind of problems only it will come readily to my mind. Nothing wrong there. There is absolutely no issue in doing such kind of thing. But at the same time, I can invest a little bit of my time and effort to understand what kind of problems exist and what are the problems that others are posting. And I can use that, use that, and then use my own inherent experience and expertise, rephrase that problem, arrange the problem in my own ways, and then work on that problem. Now, at this stage, I'm still an innovator. When I actually become an entrepreneur, because I'm just now trying to solve one problem and then trying to get a product or a solution out, I'm not necessarily putting others' lives in risk. Nobody has joined me yet. I have also not committed to that cause. So some point I graduate from an innovator and become an entrepreneur. I really start working and then talking to the customers, trying to take it to the field. Really, as an innovator also I do, but as an entrepreneur, I am no more, stopping there, trying to just solve the problem. I'm doing much more than that. So first, in the first stage, just to answer that question, as an innovator, either I should have sufficient knowledge to work on a problem, or I should necessarily look at other problems that are being posted outside, what we call as market intelligence or market research. That should necessarily happen. Look for those. It is not necessary to create a solution for that problem, but I can leverage that information to come up with my own set of problem statements, which only I know of, which I can relate to my own experience and then work on.
Right, sir. So we have a question from Shubham Patil, which says, in a book called $100 Startup, it was mentioned that one should try to sell the emotions rather than the feature of a product or service. So how true is it in this practical world?
Okay, see, it is, if you talk about various what we call as quick prototyping, and then trying to in marketing, there is something called as signaling to the market. So before you even launch an offering, you try to signal to the market that it is coming, something is going to come. Everybody uses that. Every product, every venture, every startup, every government, they signal to the outside world that I am working on it and it is going to solve your problem. Now, why do we do that? Because we want to test it out. We actually want to, when we signal, we are actually trying to capture the emotions of the marketplace. We are actually trying to sell, sort of connect emotionally with the other person. And that's what we try to do by signaling to the market. Now, in this starting with why, which was telling about Simon Sinek, if you just look at that 10-minute kind of a TEDx talk, you will see the same thing. It talks about Apple, how it is very different, and they talk about the why behind that. Essentially, either you look at all brand loyalty related discussions, it's always, if you believe in what I believe, then essentially the job is done. So if I am able to open an emotional connection with you, then whatever I put on this side in the pipe, you will receive on the other side, no matter what the product is, no matter what the quality is. At some point, if the quality is very bad, then the people will feel that you have sort of violated that trust or the belief, which is essentially always there. But when we look at a Procter and Gamble, when we look at Apple, when we look at any of these Tatas, we always think of the trust. We know, oh, it's a Tata brand. Oh, yeah. So it is always essentially we look for emotions first, and I'm not debating on. I mean, I'm not able to conclude one way or the other. See, again, if you look, anything can be looked from two different angles. If you sort of look from one angle, you will look like, okay, you are actually cheating the customers. If you look from the other angle, it is plain and simple that we are all emotional beings, and we want to first get connected emotionally before we buy anything. So it's a perspective that the individual takes or the startup takes. It has nothing to do with as an outsider. As an outsider, I may look at a firm and then say, oh, Harley Davidson or Apple, oh, this is an emotional product. I mean, can you see this product is selling at such a high price? Only a person who is not knowing what the market reality would buy at that price. So that person standing outside can clearly give that view, but the insider will look at that and then say, oh, it's a Tata product. Oh, I trust Tata. I will definitely buy if it's a Tata product. Same, whatever be this thing, right? Whatever be the, whether it's an individual, oh, this comes from this individual. Oh, he's always true. So what he says is true. So once you have that emotional connect, whether you want to use the word, you are selling the emotion. That is a little crude, but essentially emotion helps.
Right, sir. So we have a question from Mohammed Suhail, which says, can you narrate us? We like to narrate a story of our team profile in the pitch deck. Can you suggest a frame or a relevant document for that to narrate a story of the team's profile?
There is no, okay, so we don't insist on anything, and I don't know if others insist on a way to share that. I think it's best, just like the way when you apply for a job, when you apply for anything, it is always that it's like a covering letter. You always say why you are the best for that, and you are the best to talk about why you are the best. So in whatever fashion that it is. So there is no one set standard for that. So I think what you narrate would be the best.
Right, sir. So we have another question here. It says, how to gauge the solution that we have proposed that has addressed the problem, and how do we know that it has the potential to be successful in the market?
See, generally a solution when it is being built, it's always called as co-creation. Many times it is told that you co-create the solution with your customer. Then the customer is a willing participant in the creation itself. So when the solution is put out, the customer has already bought into it because it is the customer's solution, not your solution. So that approach would hold good for everything. So if you and all the leading, either it's a corporate or a startup, the approach is the same. Work with the customer, work with the user. I think it would be successful.
Right, sir. So I think we have a slightly vague question. We have a question saying, we do not have any MVP. Is it okay to pitch our tech?
Oh, so if the question is specifically for, different incubation centers or different accelerator programs have different expectations. So depending on what stage they intend to support. Now, because we are a technology research institute, and the incubation center accelerator program is located within the institute, our focus is on those early stage startups, on aspiring entrepreneurs. Essentially, where we focus on is from idea stage all the way till the stage where the pilots are done. So if you are anywhere in between, it's wonderful, because post pilot we actually refer the startups to other incubators, business incubators, for seed funding and beyond. So if it is anything, because if it's anything below pilots, before pilots, then those are all the entrepreneurs and startups, innovators could potentially benefit from associating themselves with us, because that is where our faculty, our students, our researchers can potentially be of some use to you. So that's the stage. Absolutely. So this is short answer to your question. Absolutely to us. But for other incubators and accelerators, they have each one has a lot specific criteria. Some would insist on paying customers. Some would insist on successful pilots. So it depends on each of those criteria.
Right, so Mr. Karthik, please.
Thanks. Thanks so much. So a couple of more things that comes to our mind and people had emailed in is that if you're looking at what's your preference when you look at some of these pitch decks? Do you look for the team or do you look for the idea? Is a good team and a bad idea, or a bad team and a good idea? I know both don't match, but what's your preference? What's our preference?
Yeah, so we look for the, see, idea comes second. Okay, so let me, as I was just telling, right, the way the whole thing comes out, first we look at the market challenge. So the challenge comes first. Whatever is present, everything remaining the same, what we call a ceteris paribus. I mean, irrespective of whether I work on it, the challenge exists. So the challenge exists in the market, and that challenge is being converted into a problem statement. And that problem statement is only a subset of the overall challenge. Now, if that problem statement is the entrepreneur or the innovator, from his standpoint, looks at the problem and then thinks of an idea to solve that problem. That may not be there may be tons of ideas that could come looking at that problem, but that entrepreneur has found out that idea. So as the entrepreneur or the innovator is submitting the pitch, the entrepreneur residence, or either for the entrepreneur residence grant, or for this pitch competition next week, or for startup grant, or for incubation, whatever it is, if there is a way for them to connect to that, this is the challenge I found, and from this challenge I found that these are the problems that I could see emanating out of that challenge, and I, with my narrow experience and expertise, I could see with my prism only this idea which I can work on. Potentially this could be the solution. So this is and here is the market opportunity for this potential problem and the solution that I'm working on. and then following it up with the team members. Obviously, if the person is coming in as an innovator or as a or as a, I mean, sort of the founder or entrepreneur in residence, he's yet to build a team. So the team has to be built. So, but we insist that they actually at least convince one more person and come as a 2-member team, right? So essentially, a great challenge that they have found out, which has captivated their hearts, which has got a huge potential impact, and there is a team that is committed to work on that, would be helpful. There is no obviously there will be. Able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously there'll be a little bit of imbalance, one versus the other. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's basically it's a combination of all of these factors.
Sure, sure.
And when they apply to us, I mean, why us? Why us? I mean, there should be something that we should be meaningfully contributing to them. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, right? We should contribute something both intellectually and connection, or help articulating their solution or problem a little more. Something we have to be doing, right? So that is also something which we look for.
Of course. So one more aspect is the socio or economic impact of the idea. So how important do you think is that? How do please give them some tips on how to work on the socio or the economic impact for the idea?
It again depends. If the person is just stepping out of college, or in his early stages of his career, with limited understanding of the problem or the challenge, it's very difficult for them to articulate. So it is, if in terms of impact, whether it is business growth, or it is customers, or it is revenue, or it is number of lives touched, none of these things, it's only going to be a jugglery of spreadsheet. It's not going to be anything which is going to be realistic unless they invest a significant amount of time. And that's not going to happen before they seek support and help from others, right? So in the past, there are people who have come out and then they thought it will have a significant impact. Primarily looking at, I'll tell example, right? Vision Empower is a startup. We were looking at only the number of blind people in the country and how many of them graduate from school with maths or science disciplines, and then they realized that very few, not very few, it's in single digit. Only one student pass out from within the science discipline. So it's a no-brainer. Auditory impact, how many are there, and how many sign language interpreters are there? Very easy. Now you can justify the impact. Zero labs, encryption. How many times there are breaches because of encryption? While encryption is there at rest and encryption is there in transit, there is no encryption while operations are performed. So how do we solve that problem? You look at the problems, you realize that there are tons of breaches there. So at a very high level, if there's a way to say that, okay, this is the economic or social impact, I think that's all would be possible to do initially, at least, and that should be sufficient.
Sure, sir. One more part again in the pitch deck is the market landscape, the market potential, and the competitors. So how do you think they should come about this? Any tips for putting out these few things?
Again, the same for the last question actually holds good here as well. See, all of these things, so I had a slide, right? You get more passionate, or you start loving your venture or offering only if you get to know more about it. So unless if I don't know something, I will only be superficially interested there. So the more I invest my time and energy, only I will be able to address these questions. So whatever, to the best possible extent, if they can do that, that's what would help them to put together a slide. So there is no tips; it's primarily effort.
Great. One of the other things that came to a lot of people's minds was that nowadays everything is going to runs on a subscription based model. A lot of people think that if you build a software as a service, it may be, for example, something like for milk or for any other product or for maybe the big baskets and other things. It works on subscription, so getting there is very easy. So they think that, like I was observing when you were talking about building a new space. So people think that if you build a product, I mean, getting subscriptions might be easier. So, and it's the online world. So what's your tip for them who are preparing their decks? Because I think that was one of the other things that came in through email. That what is your thought on this aspect?
See, software as a service, subscription model. Again, it is each it is always said that okay, platform business model is the easiest. Let me build a platform. I can get two-sided users on both the sides, and I'm almost done. See, it's easier said than done. All of the, irrespective of the business model adopted, unless it's difficult to answer a question. Actually, it is the only way any venture is successful or successful is depends on how effectively that solution is rolled out. A lot of effort that has to go in to make it so there is no a silver bullet to say, yeah, if it's a platform startup, it will be successful. If it's a SaaS startup, it will be successful. Each startup is unique, and each sort of team is unique. So it is in strategy, it is always said that everything is depends. There is a school of thought called the environmental school. So in that, it says that it depends on the environment. So there is no silver bullet.
Perfect. I think we have a couple of more that have come in. Mr. Simon Sarkar asked that, according to you, what is the most important trait an entrepreneur should have?
See, so I am. I don't know the general.
What do you look for?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I will, if I touch my heart, and then if I start talking about this, the most important trait an entrepreneur has to have is that the entrepreneur should really believe in what he's trying to do. It is easier it look like a cliched statement, but as I look at almost as so we have nurtured close to around now 60 plus startups and almost 100 plus innovators and entrepreneurs, founders. If you really look at them and then see that how they have strived and struggled over these years, even during these tough times, what you really see is that they have really been passionate about their cause, what they are working on, whether it is electronic health records or whether it is mental wellness or it is homomorphic encryption or it is anything to do with virtual reality, augmented reality, irrespective of you can see in their eyes and in their voices the passion that they have. Only thing, the voice is a little trembling because of the uncertain business times. But the trait that the entrepreneur needs to have is that it's like one more family member. A venture is there like a one more family member, or a product is like one more family member. And they know in and out of that family member. And there is no reason why they are going to leave that family member down just because there is a adversity in the family or in the business environment. Now, if I have that trait, and that's going to happen only if I know that it's me. If I know that, okay, my son is me, my venture is me, my wife is me. So if I do that, that's going to only happen if I really believe in that, in this case, cause, or in that case, in a human being's case, the person. So that's the trait the entrepreneur should have. And that's what would be very essential as the entrepreneur starts the journey. Maybe the entrepreneur would think that, oh, I don't believe in it, I'm just going to experiment with it. First time, in my second venture, I will actually look for a worthy cause or a worthy product or a worthy solution. Now it's my testing phase. I really want to understand. It's again an individual's way of looking at it, but that's the trait that would be very, very essential as a what should I say? Again, a successful entrepreneur. Success is something which is very, very personal, right? When we talk about the trait of an entrepreneur, it's a very personal statement. What does it mean by success? So when outsiders look at it, they look at success differently. When I as you as an individual look at yourself, you will see success very, very differently. And that's what Clayton Christensen told, right? Even in his last sort of years towards the fag end of his life, the comment quotes towards the fag end of his life. So that success, that trait that is going to make you successful, which I believe is this. So that's my statement.
I think we have the last two questions before we wind up. Sir, we think we still need to fill some skill gaps to build our product. Even in that case, should we pitch the deck?
Yeah, that's also, I said, again, what if I don't have I have the tech talent? Doesn't matter, right? Not everybody knows every technology, right? So in fact, even I used IMAX itself as an experiment, as an example, right? We partner with the institute's faculty and researchers. We can't fill all the tech gaps. None of us, right? So institute handholds us for the technology. Institute handholds us for the domain knowledge. We partner with NGOs for domain knowledge. We partner with government for funding. We partner with corporates for CSR grants. The best way is, Mr. Karthik knows this better, right? He's from Rotary. He has held great positions in Rotary International. Rotary is, so the more we are networked, the more we partner, the more we have to slowly start defining, or the more you start defining your core competence, you will start realizing whom you should partner with and whom you should network with, and whom you should strategy. I mean, when I say network, it's not like a one-off, right? It's not what they call as some term that is being used for quick networking. It's not like that. It's more of you enter into a strategic kind of partnership. So that could be a separate tech firm or a friend of yours who can part-time contribute to your venture. It doesn't matter. Initial stages, you are building the team, and as an entrepreneur in residence, you are alone, all alone. So absolutely, that's fine. I mean, what matters is why are you alone and what are you trying to achieve?
Okay, the last one says that my idea is not an NGO, but includes a social section, cause of the society for. So what should the MVP be? I think it's not clear, but yeah.
Yeah, see, the social, when I went to social, an entrepreneur can also focus on a social cause. There is nothing wrong. That entrepreneur is called as a social enterprise. That enterprise is called as a social enterprise. It is a for-profit social enterprise. There is nothing wrong in a. So there are a lot of private or not so social enterprise which are not making any money at all. They are all loss making. Then some folks actually loosely call them as anti-social enterprises. They don't actually make any profit with investor money, right? As a social enterprise, our aim is to actually impact the society, and at the same time, we are also trying to solve a social cause, social problem. There is nothing wrong. What would be an MVP? Yes, work with the same customers who are there in that field and then make them. I mean, so again, see, minimum viable prototype is anything that actually, which you can take to the customers and say, yes, now you can put it into use. Right. So the customers are, the users are there, the customers are there. There is nothing that distinguishes, right? So in this case, it's an NGO. It could be a government organization. It could be a for-profit organization trying to do various other things. And one aspect of their work is also this impact. Generally, all for-profit organizations have a CSR wing. They also try to focus on this.
Perfect, sir.
Right, so I think we can close out with one last question. So the last question is, some businesses take time to grow and turn out to be beneficial in the long run financially. And some investors don't like investing on these ventures if they don't see an instant return within some months. What are your views on this?
Yeah, so see again, just like the way there is a objective, purpose, goal, that each person follows. Investors are also a going concern, right? A startup is a going concern. A going concern is a technical term which actually says that we all try to live for a long time. We want to, sort of exist for a long time. We are a going concern. So, and each person wants to exist exist, grow, be impactful, and get measured with different metrics. There are investors who focus on, like there is United Seed Fund, fabulous organization which focuses on socially impactful ventures. There are grants and foundations, grants, Omdior Foundation, Knight Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Tata Trusts. They all try to help organizations, startups, which work on a worthy cause, which may have a long gestation period. There are also research funding from government, which are focused on not necessarily social, but more focused on impactful technology, IP-centric ventures. They are all patient to wait. They are all patient. They will be waiting patiently. So again, if we go to an investor who is looking, whose mandate is to get returns in a short term, then we are pitching to the wrong audience. There is nothing wrong with the investor. Maybe we have not done our homework right. Put the ball on your court. I mean, from my standpoint, I know my problem is complex. My solution is complex. The gestation period is going to be long. Where should I go? Then I look for funding sources which will allow for such long gestation period, and then try to focus on those ventures, venture funds or granting agencies, grants. So, and then pitch there. So it's essentially good. Just like the way we talked about various fits, there has to be a fit between a venture to investor fit also has to happen. Right, and that requires a little bit of homework on all of our sides before we approach the investor.
Right, so thank you, Professor Ramesh. Thank you very much. We hope you all have had a very good evening. On behalf of the organizing committee and the audience, I thank the speaker, Professor Ramesh Sundaraman, for all the valuable information he shared with us today. It has been a great pleasure. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sumant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Manoj, and